live worldwide. This is the Jamie Havican Show with your host, Jamie Havican.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Jamie Havican Show. Hope you guys are having a good night. You just finished listening to Fate Magazine Radio with Chase Kletzky, and her guest was Aaron Judkins talking about the Finding Noah film that's going to be coming out very soon. Tonight we have a returning guest in Courtney Brown. We'll be talking about remote viewing and a couple related topics. We have an hour tonight with Courtney Brown, and so make the most of it. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat room in all caps, and we will get to them as soon as we can. With that said, I'd like to welcome my co-host Bill to the show. How you doing, Bill?
Good evening, Jamie. How are you? And hello to all the listeners and all our friends in the KGRAradio.com chat room. Doing great.
Yeah, we have a good turnout tonight, and I am excited about tonight's show because, you know, even though the first show went amazing, we were not able to hit on all the things we wanted to cover. So with that, I think we will refresh a few people with a little bit of information on Courtney. So why don't we start out there? Tell them a little bit about remote viewing, how you got interested in it, and what role you play.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm the director of the Farsight Institute, and that's F-A-R-S-I-G-H-T, like seeing far. And we're a nonprofit, and we're the largest, biggest, I can say that best even, because we're the only venue where you can get these full-blown scientific studies that are public and publicly conducted, publicly demonstrated, displayed on anywhere. So using remote viewing, as it is done using procedures that were developed by the United States military and used for espionage purposes, or methodologies that are derivative of those procedures. So we're really the only show in town for people to actually come and see how it's done and watch it. And we do it for scientific exploration into time, nature of reality, nature of space. But we also do it for exploration, such as what we're talking about tonight, some of the recent ones. But the projects we have done before are easily accessible through our website at farsight.org, F-A-R-S-I-G-H-T.org, again, because we're a nonprofit. And they're very wide-ranging, a huge ton of them. And we use the absolute best remote viewers on the planet who are trained in these methodologies. And it's a mental procedure, of course, for perceiving across time and space, an apparent complete violation in the accepted laws of physics, both quantum and relativistic. So since the phenomenon does work, the laws are inaccurate. They're not correct. But there is a revolution taking place in physics, and the revolution does allow for these things to happen, but the revolution is not complete. So mainstream science is still behind the curve in terms of this. But the actual original theories that allowed for remote viewing to happen were originated back in 1957 by a physicist named Hugh Everett, who studied who studied at Princeton University, and Hugh Everett developed an interpretation of quantum mechanics that fit the facts on the ground. And the standard interpretation, the so-called collapsing of the Copenhagen model, the collapsing of the waveform and so on, he considered a monstrosity, and he offered a different one that was commonly called the other worlds interpretation. And now, about 18% of mainstream physicists have adopted that as the correct view of reality. And that means 82% don't accept it. But those 82% are older, and they're going to be retiring and dying off, and so we'll get generational replacement in that. But you have to understand that the mainstream understandings of relativistic as well as quantum physics the fundamentals are over 100 years old. They haven't changed at all. The details have changed. I'm a mathematician, and I appreciate the math of both quantum calculations as well as relativistic physics, but the interpretation is that's what's in dispute. It's not the calculations. The calculations in the math has actually advanced over the years. The refinements have advanced. We now do quantum computing. We've merged the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics with relativity to produce a standard model. So there's been a lot of refinement, but the fundamentals haven't changed for over 100 years. So, science never stands still for that long. So they're wrong just because of the length of time that they've stood unchallenged. But now we have clear physical things that happen that clearly indicate that the laws of quantum mechanics as well as the laws of relativistic physics are correct only within a subset of reality, and that there's a larger element of reality that they really don't apply with. So we're waiting for that revolution in physics to actually happen. But the most recent projects we've done using remote viewing have involved extraterrestrial content, which is really interesting because we've normally not done extraterrestrial type of UFO type of projects. And the remote viewers that I work with are the best on the planet, literally. And they're a bit prima donna-ish, and they like to have their work sort of appreciated and as close to a mainstream sensibility as possible. And they, generally speaking, didn't like to have extraterrestrial UFO type stuff thrown in with it because that adds another woo-woo factor to it. So we've stayed away from UFO type targets at the Far State Institute for a very long time. However, there's no rules that can't be broken. So eventually I just said, let's take the leap and do it. So we created one project that had 3 separate locations and times in it to have the remote viewers go into under totally blind conditions. They were not told anything at all about the targets when they did their work. And they were just told there is a target by a non-leading email, and they should remote view it, period. We threw in 3 different times and locations, and the first one was the so-called Face on Mars in the Cydonia region of Mars, and that project came out about 2 months ago, about 3 months ago. And then we came out with another one, a facility, a set of structures that's on the wall of a crater on the moon Iapetus, the moon of Saturn. And that came out just a few weeks ago. And then the next, and that's what we're talking amazingly about today, just a couple of weeks old. It's really, really hot off the presses. And that's one of our most unusual projects that we've ever done. The Iapetus one is really shocking. And then we have coming up in mid-July, the Phoenix Lights, this famous Phoenix Lights episode that happened in March of 1997, where these UFO lights were seen over Phoenix by hundreds of thousands of people and over a variety of different states as well as they flew in formation. So it's very interesting how this is actually 3 of those UFO type things packaged into one project. We call the overall project Remote Viewing the Aliens. And I probably won't be doing another ET remote viewing alien type stuff for quite a while, because you never know, my remote viewers might quit on me if I did. So anyway, so that but I'm glad we got our money's worth out of them this time. We got 3 different locations and times all at once.
Now, Courtney, what type of training does a remote viewer undergo, and what are the different techniques? Because I know Daz Smith and Dick Allgaier have different approaches when they do these remote viewers, right?
Yeah, the styles of remote viewing that Dick and Daz use are originating from different branches of the U.S. Army. So what happened is the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, they housed an official program in remote viewing that developed CRV, or controlled remote viewing. And the intellectual heritage of that is tied back to Ingo Swann, a well-known psychic, now dead. And the the method is typically just called the CRV method. And the procedures that are used by Dick Allgaier are different. They're called the HRVG method, and that's from the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild. And that was taught to him by Glenn Wheaton, who came out of Special Forces intelligence. And in the Special Forces intelligence, it was not an official movement of remote viewing. I mean, it was not an official program. It was an unofficial movement within the military that later became known as the 1st Earth Battalion and was featured in the movie Men Who Stare at Goats, starring Jeff Bridges and George Clooney. So that style of remote viewing has an intellectual heritage that goes back to Dr. Richard Ireland. And so we have two people that are separate, Dr. Richard Ireland versus Ingo Swann, originating different styles in different branches of the U.S. Army. And so Dick Allgaier uses the HRVG approach, and Daz Smith uses the CRV approach. And they have used these methodologies for about 15 years, and they're the best on the planet right now. I mean, they can describe things under totally blind conditions that are scary good. I mean, they can be, if the target is anything at all, and it's clearly defined according to the way targeting has to be done, and you have them, I mean, if I send them an email saying there is a project with a new target, do it, that's all they get. You get work that is so stunningly accurate, it's just scary.
It is. You know what? I've seen a bunch of these documentaries, and it is incredibly amazing how quickly you see it all come to fruition. I mean, I'll give you an example. I just watched the Aliens at Iapetus, and how Dick Allgaier, you know, you see what he's doing. He's so quickly. I was taken aback. Courtney, I was taken aback because it was incredible how quickly he was, you know, doing the diagrams, etc. I don't want to give too much away, but it was incredible, I have to say.
Yeah, there's no worry about giving things away because the video itself, you have to actually see it to actually watch all the nuances and all of the data that are coming through. In the old days, remote viewing was done with paper and pen. And that's how it was done in the military, and much of it probably still is done just that way in the military. Although my understanding is that the military's current program is much bigger and more involved than the old program. And if that, you know, the old program was closed down in November of 1995, and my understanding is that they started up a new one, and it's much bigger now than the old one was. And if that ever becomes public, they'll close that one down immediately and say that was some type of rogue general that did that one. Don't know how it happened. But they'll start up another one immediately afterwards because they're not going to walk away from something that works well for them. So, but when it was done with the paper and pen, it was really not something that many people could appreciate because to watch it is worse than watching the grass grow. It's just as boring as could be. But what we did was we shifted from paper and pen sessions to standing up in front of a camera, solo, just by yourself, and doing it live on a whiteboard, in a presentation whiteboard with markers. And that changed everything. Because then when we started to video record these sessions, people could see, so much more data came out because the viewers could engage the audience, figuratively speaking, because they're through the camera. They can talk about it. Their words can convey a lot of stuff. The writing on the whiteboard become illustrations of all the stuff, the nuances. For example, sometimes there was a time when Daz Smith on the Mars Cydonia project, where he was noticing stuff in the atmosphere, that the atmosphere smelled different, and he raised his head and he started to sniff, and you could see him sniffing, and you could see him sort of getting that sensory impression of the smell of the place, and then he went on to describe it. And you can't get that in a paper and pen session. All you get is a little note saying smells different or something like that written down. I mean, that's nothing. But when you actually see all these nuances come out, It's spectacular. I mean, it's just... So anyway, now the remote viewing sessions, absolutely everybody says they're riveting. I mean, they sit and they watch, and they're riveting because of two things. All projects done at the Farsight Institute always have a huge chunk that's verifiable. That means that we know something absolutely without dispute about a target, and that's verifiable. And the remote viewers have to describe that part of it exactly correct. With the Iapetus one, we know that the target is on Iapetus, which is an airless, icy moon of Saturn. So they have to perceive a meteor crater, because a meteor crater is where the target is. They have to call it a meteor crater. They have to notice that it's a dry, barren, icy moon, a soft world, that there's craters all over the place, right? Meteors. And so when they get all that correct, your jaw is already dropping. So then they add, that's the verifiable data. So then they add the new data, which is the stuff we can't verify, but since the verifiable data are so spot on, the new data are very persuasive. The new data are when they turn to the actual target and say, now, the only reason I can imagine for me being here is that there's something over here on the wall of the crater. So I'm going to go look at that, because otherwise all I see is land, craters. This is what Dick Elgire actually did in his session. He said, the only thing I see around here is big craters, rocks, meteor, junk all over the place. But if I look in this direction, there's some structures, and they shouldn't be here. So I'm going to go over and investigate that. That must be why this is a target. And he did it all blind, without being told anything. And then he goes, and then both Dick Elgire and Smith, they both did the same thing, and they both go and describe the structures in identical ways. And Dick Elgire is in Hawaii. Des Smith is in Britain. They're not having any communication between themselves at all. Opposite ends of the planet. And they're coming in with the exact, not sort of similar, the exact same descriptions of the location. I mean, it's really scary to watch. I mean, it is really so cool. I've been doing this for a long time, but even my jaw drops when I watch this stuff.
Indeed. We are getting flooded with chat questions, so I wanna throw some of them at you at this time. The first one comes from Libertas. He wants to know, have you ever worked for any U.S. government, and has the Farsight Institute ever been engaged by any non-U.S. governments for your abilities?
Well, the second one I'll answer first. The Farsight Institute is completely independent. We're totally civilian, and we've not been influenced by the governments, both the U.S. government or any other government. Have I ever worked for the government? Absolutely. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I served in Africa, and I got paid $2,100 a month. No, $2,100 a year, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
It was about I think it was about $180 a month.
Wow.
Let me see. I'd have to calculate that out to see how much that is a year. But 200, we're getting anyway,
about
a couple
20,
thousand,
yeah,
$2,500 a year. That's what I got paid. And I was a teacher. So, yeah, I did work for the U.S. government in Africa and got malaria 3 times. But that's it.
Another one coming from American Road Warrior. So the target is assigned by you, attached to digits in an email as directed in consciousness, or direction in consciousness. How do you go about setting a target and putting it to the remote viewers themselves? I guess would be the basic question.
I do not give them the so-called digits that the questioner asked about. We don't do it that way. What I do is I design the target. One of the reasons that these people work with me as a tasker is they don't get any bum targets. Anything at all you do with remote viewing takes skill and training. And like, for example, somebody once asked us to remote view Richard Nixon. And like, that was such a stupid thing. You can't remote view Richard Nixon. When? When he was being born? When he was dying? When he was giving a speech? When? After he died and he's in heaven? I mean, it's like you have to give a location, a time. You have to have total specificity of all elements so that you know it's verifiable. So one of the reasons that the remote viewers like working with me is all of our targets at Farsight are fully specified, and they all have complete verifiable stuff in them so that their data can be compared with it and can be evaluated. So anyway, so we don't do the random digits for a whole bunch of reasons, but the remote viewers do use random digits, but I don't give them out. All I do is I send an email to Dick Algar and Daz Smith, for example, in the current projects, and say, there is a new project. It has so-and-so many targets, say 4 or 5 or 6 targets. Begin with target 1, send me the stuff. They then do their stuff, they record it on video, they upload it to our Dropbox, and I get it. That's how it works. Now, how does the actual target become a target is really what the questioner probably meant to ask. And that's because through our research that we've done at the Farsight Institute, we know that a target becomes a target, meaning it becomes the focus of the remote viewer's perception because of a telepathic link between the remote viewer, when the remote viewer is doing the session, and the analyst. You see, the remote viewer is doing the session for the intent of satisfying the informational needs of the analyst. So that analyst's thoughts, when the analyst is comparing the data, the remote viewing data, to the target for the first time, the analyst's thoughts actually create that focus of perception. It may sound weird, but it's really cool. That means that when, say, Daz Smith is doing a session, he is unconsciously connecting, not consciously, he's not trying to do this, but unconsciously he's connecting to me. And my thoughts, when I'm actually in the future looking at his session and comparing it to the target, my comparing it to the target in the future is actually creating the focus of perception for him. That's called the closing process. And in some of our experiments, we have the viewers close their own sessions, meaning the viewers are the first persons to actually compare the sessions to the targets in some of our experiments. So after all the data are collected in some of our experiments and we distribute the sessions worldwide on our internet, on the website, then we have the target given to us and we give the target to the remote viewer. And then the remote viewer looks at the target and compares the target to his or her session before anybody else can do it. So the analyst, in that sense, closes the loop, and it's the remote viewer herself or himself that actually does that. But it's that closing of the loop, the time loop between when the remote viewers do their sessions and when they're analyzed for the first time, that's what creates the target. And so since we discovered that, it was not necessary for us to give out target coordinates or these digits that the questioner was asking about. So we let our remote viewers come up with their own target coordinates. And we just say there's a target, go do it. Because we know that the focus of perception will be defined by the closing process that happens in the future. But that does mean when they do their sessions and send them in, when they send them in, at that moment, I clear my desk, I have nothing else on my mind, I only do it when I'm calm, I look at their sessions and I very carefully compare the sessions to the target. I don't have any other thoughts going on because I know my focus, my thoughts, are what's creating that focus of perception. So if I want them to get all the data that's verifiable correct, I have to make sure I'm thinking of Iapetus and not the Taj Mahal. I can't be thinking about how I really want to go on vacation and go to the beach.
Well, that's what you're going to see.
when I'm looking at the sessions for the first time. Because what you'll see then is the sessions will become me swimming at the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
So the closing process is actually crucial. Now it's not like my thoughts are the target. That's not what's going on because we have enormous experience of remote viewers. When they perceive the targets, they discover real things that are not known by anybody, including including the analyst. So they actually do discover, and so they're really focusing on the real target, but the thoughts that get them to that target are the thoughts of the analyst, and they're acting like a laser pointer to point them in the direction. So I have actually, most of our targets have pictures. So while I'm examining the remote viewing data, I have the picture of the target in front of me, and I'm looking at that. And so that clearly is containing all of the verifiable data that they need to get. But beyond that, I don't know. And so they get the other stuff.
Gotcha.
And that other stuff is to die for.
They
It's
have
great.
to filter out. They have to filter out what you're pretty much focused on, as when you're looking at pictures or specifics.
No,
from
they don't. They don't.
random
They don't
thoughts?
filter anything else. All they do is they have these perceptions coming across their own mind.
Mhm.
So those perceptions are themselves looking at the target, but they're doing that session with the intent of satisfying the informational needs of the analyst. So it's an unconscious process of having that focus of perception created. Like, for example, why did they remote view Iapetus rather than the Eiffel Tower? So what causes the laser pointer to point in the direction of Iapetus rather compared to any other place? So they're not like sifting through my thoughts. It's not that specific a connection.
Okay.
It's a more general connection. And we know it's not that specific a connection because 90% of the stuff they get back, the analyst does not know.
Well-
But the analysts focus on, let me give you an example.
Okay.
There was a session that was being done by a very good remote viewer in the past, and the monitor was a good friend of mine, and it was a session that was being monitored. So that was being done over a speakerphone. So the session was being done in one state, and it was being listened to by the remote viewer in another state. I'm sorry. The session was being done by the remote viewer in one state, and it was being listened to by the monitor in another state. Well, in the middle of the session, and the session was going great, the remote viewer was very good, and the monitor had the picture of the target out in front of him, so he was actually keeping his mind focused on what the target actually is. And the monitor got bored after a while and stood up and started to walk around his basement where he had some bookshelves on a dusty bookshelf with a lot of books. And then he heard over the speakerphone, wow, the target, something has changed. I'm no longer where I was. Now I'm like in a dark place and there's like dusty bookshelves all over the place. And then the monitor heard that, realized what was going on, and he ran back to his desk and looked at the picture again. And then the viewer said, "Oh no, I'm back.
Wow.
I'm back at the original place now." So,
Wow.
yeah, so it was, and we've done enormous, that's just anecdotal, but we've done a lot of testing of this. And it was the focus, it's the primary reason I wrote my book, Remote Viewing, The Science and Theory of Non-Physical Perception, which is the standard book for the science of remote viewing as it's done using these military or military-derived methodologies. So people who want to find my book can find a link to the, it's sold on Amazon and bookstores and so on, but you can find a link to it on the Farsight's website, farsight.org. And that's the book that explains it. So we're going through a very brief description of how targeting is actually done, but the book is where it explains it all.
Oh,
Well,
And
before-
actually, this was
I'm
a
sorry.
problem in early remote viewing research where they didn't understand this process, and some experiments were designed that were considered sort of like boilerplate. This is what you're doing. This is what you need to do to test remote viewing. That actually were fatally flawed in their experimental design, and because they didn't understand how the target focus was created, the analysts were actually, in these experimental designs, they were actually corrupting the actual data when they were being collected. They used to have experiments where they would have remote viewers remote view one target out of a set of 5, where 1 would be correct and 4 would be decoys. And the analyst would be blind in the sense that they would not be told which one is the correct one, and the correct one was being chosen by a computer or some random dynamic device. And what they ended up doing is getting really good sessions, but of the wrong target. So let's say target A is the correct target. Well, they'd get a really good session of target B or C. And like, why should that happen? Why should you get a really good description of one of the other targets?
Mm-hmm.
And so what they thought was that they came up with all types of words to describe this, and they eventually decided we'll call it the stacking effect, where in a pool of the targets are not independent of one another, and they developed even statistical procedures for evaluating to account for the so-called stacking effect, which is a typical statistical way of thinking, but it was a stupid way of thinking, because if you are an engineer and your bridge is wobbling, you don't use statistics to get rid of the wobbling effect in the data.
Mm-hmm.
Your bridge is going to collapse. You fixed the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a leak. There was obviously an informational leak in their experimental design. Elements of one target were leaking into the perceptions that the remote viewers were having, and the early scientists didn't understand how that actually happened. But anyway, we did figure it out, and since we did figure it out, we don't have that problem any longer.
All right, well, with that, I hate to stop you where we're at, but we have to take a very quick break, guys. You're listening to the Jamie Havican Show, and our guest tonight is Courtney Brown. We're talking remote viewing, and the second half of the show will be coming up right after this. Hold tight, guys. We'll be right back here on kgraradio.com.
Hey everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONsymposium.com. That's MUFONsymposium.com.
Attention folks in the Midwest. Find out what's really going on with otherworldly beings at the UNX News Tour 2015. Takes place on the second Fridays in June, July, and August at the Unity Temple on the Plaza in Kansas City, Missouri. In June, see Hollywood film producer Craig Campabasso present Stranger at the Pentagon, about an ET who visited President Eisenhower and the Pentagon in 1957 and is still on Earth today. The short film will be shown after his lecture. In July, see Dr. Lynn Kitai, who will present Beyond the Phoenix Lights. Dr. Kitai talks about the connection between all unexplained phenomena, including near-death experience, out-of-body UFO contact, and the long-term effects on the witnesses. Tickets are $25 in advance and $30 at the door. You can visit the website at www.unxnewsmagazine.com for tickets and information. That's unxnewsmagazine.com.
Live alternative talk radio in over 125 countries across Mother Earth. KGRAradio.com.
And now, let's get back to the show. You are listening to the Jamie Havican Show right here on KGRAradio.com. All right, guys, welcome back to the Jamie Havican Show here on KGRA. Tonight we're talking with Courtney Brown, and the topic is remote viewing. And we are getting to your questions from the chat room. And the next question we have up is from Nikki Anonymous. Is remote viewing something anybody can do, or do you have to have something special? And what are some ways one can initiate remote viewing?
Actually, remote. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
No, go ahead. I didn't say anything. Go ahead.
Okay. Remote viewing is, from all that we know, is something that anyone can do. However, the difference between remote viewing and normal psychic procedures is that remote viewing is done under very specified controls and always done totally blind. So the various procedures can change, but the one thing that absolutely constant is that the remote viewers absolutely must do all of their work totally blind, meaning they can never be told anything at all about a target at all. No conveyance of any information. They don't even hear my voice or see my face when they're told that there's a target. No nuances, nothing. And so they're just told with an email saying there's a target, remote view it. And they do it alone, by themselves. Nobody present who knows anything about the sessions. And then the targets always have to have fully verifiable elements within them, a lot of them. And the data have to be compared, the remote viewing data have to be compared with those verifiable elements for accuracy. Now, with a normal psychic, typically what happens is somebody will go into the room of a psychic and say, tell me about my dead sister, or something like that. Well, you're not doing anything blind at that point because the person's asking you right in front of you. So you see the person. The person's telling you about their dead sister. So nothing's being done blind. Nothing's being done with controls. And then afterwards, there's no evaluation to see if the data are in fact correct in a hard type of scientific way, where very clear, identifiable elements are compared with the actual remote viewing data. So all of those scientific controls are typically not there. So remote viewing doesn't use the word psychic because remote viewers like to separate or differentiate themselves from that whole uncontrolled realm. Now, that doesn't mean that the perceptual process is not being, that the psychic mental perceptual process is not being used by natural psychics. It's just that the entire set of controls are not being used, and so there's no way to evaluate the data. For example, there's a internet story going around recently where a guy went to 4 people who are natural psychics and said, I want you to tell me about my dead sister. And all 4 of the natural psychics gave him long histories, long details, lots of information about his dead sister. And then he revealed afterwards that he had no sister at all. There was no dead sister. So the whole stuff was garbage. The whole stuff was junk. And so with remote viewing, nothing like that could ever happen. You could never be in front of somebody and telling them about something. So also remote viewing targets are very clearly defined, usually in terms of a picture, so that there's a lot of detail that is visible in the picture that you can then compare after the fact with the actual remote viewing data. So the collection of the data under totally blind conditions with no information leaks, and then the analysis of the data, comparing all the elements, the verifiable elements, with the known verifiable elements and the actual target. Those components have to be there for remote viewing. So to do this, there are some free educational resources that are available, including a over 20-hour course that's hosted by YouTube. It's all free, plus a printable text and everything. And you can get to it on our website at www.farsight.org. And in the nav bar, you'll see a section for SRV, and it says free right next to it. And that's SRV is for scientific remote viewing, and that's where that huge amount of educational material is available. And there are video lessons as well as audio lessons. I mean, it's, again, over 20 hours of stuff. It's a complete course. And then there's also all of our projects where you can actually see the remote viewing take place, all recorded live on video. So you see how it's done. You actually see the actual remote viewers doing their stuff in front of your very eyes, all done totally blind. So you get an idea of how it's done. Now, does this mean anybody can do it? Well, it's best answered like this. It's like playing the piano. It's exactly like playing the piano. I don't play the piano, but my son plays the piano, and other people have taken lessons for many years play the piano. If I play the piano, I can demonstrate that it makes noise. I can play chopsticks and things like that. But if you want to really know how it's done, you go to listen to someone like Lang Lang in Carnegie Hall. And then when you listen to Lang Lang play the piano, you say, "Oh, wow, that's what it's all about." So in remote viewing, it's the same thing. Anyone can have these perceptions, but to get good at it, it takes a lot of effort, time, practice, patience, hard work.
Right. Yep.
And in terms of the skills, there are some skills that are beneficial. People who can draw are better remote viewers because you have to be able to describe what you're perceiving. So in the CRV world, or in the controlled remote viewing world, there's not been a lot of emphasis on drawing, so they use a lot of words. And we have found that to be particularly limiting. Now, Daz Smith is using CRV. However, Daz Smith is a graphic artist by profession. That's how he makes a living, as a graphic artist. So he's an artist. And so drawing for him is a natural thing. So, and Dick Allgaier, although he's been a celebrity newscaster for over 30 years in Hawaii, he's been the face of the news in Hawaii for a number of decades. He's now retired, but he just happens to be a very good sketcher, a very good artist, very good drawer. So art is actually a very important component of this thing. And then there's another element, and that is having a quiet mind. I should add one more thing. The quiet mind really is helped by practices such as meditation, things that quiet the mind. A noisy mind has difficulty perceiving these subtle thoughts. But also a drug-free mind really helps. So people who use psychoactive drugs, from marijuana to everything else, what they're doing is they're having real experiences, but they're uncontrolled experiences. And so it's like taking a monkey wrench and throwing it into the brain. Oh, you get a boom, you get a brag, you get something out of it, but it's not a controlled experience. And so I like to think of the brain, I like to treat my brain the way Paul Newman used to, the famous actor, he used to treat his race cars, because he was also a race car driver. And he used to treat the engines in his race cars really with great care, because they're the things that win the races. Anyway, so with remote viewing, the best remote viewers don't use psychoactive drugs because they keep their brains in really clear, pristine conditions so they can perceive those subtle thoughts in a controlled manner. And they, generally speaking, take art seriously, and they do some other practices which help keep their minds quiet, like meditation.
Now, Courtney, I want to ask you a question. Do you think that the mainstream media, the scientific community, even the general public will ever come to grips or accept remote viewing as a legitimate application method of credible research? Do you think that eventually, with all the work that you do, getting it out there, that people will come to have an understanding on how this approach is valid and it works?
Absolutely. It's inevitable that will happen because it is a real phenomenon. We've demonstrated this countless times, and we have these projects coming out one after the other. So what happened, say, in the mid-90s when the remote viewing project that was housed in the military became public is people laughed. There was a lot of hawing about, people calling others deluded. I was laughed at a lot. So there was a lot of the giggle factor. All of that's gone now. Nobody laughs any longer. There's no laughing anymore. In fact, when you hear people talk about things that are out there, including extraterrestrial type stuff, but also remote viewing stuff, the worst you'll get is hysteria. But you don't get people mocking or laughing anymore. You get a little bit of hysteria because the people who are most people are just quiet now. But when you get people sort of like mainstream news, and I won't mention any particular news outlets, but there's a couple major news outlets that had a couple stories recently about some things that are being reported by NASA, including some lights on an asteroid called Ceres and a pyramid-shaped structure that's on Mars. And NASA is really not commenting about it, but they're reporting it in the sense that the pictures are out. And so the mainstream news articles were sort of using the word conspiracy theorists about every other sentence. Conspiracy theorists are saying this. Conspiracy theorists are thinking that. Well, it was NASA that was publishing this stuff. So you see, this whole idea of getting hysterical by saying the word conspiracy theorist in every other sentence is sometimes what you see, but nobody's laughing anymore. At worst, you get a little bit of panic. And so what's clearly going to happen, and what's clearly inevitable at this point, is that we're approaching a moment in which this stuff will come out, and it will be reported widely in mainstream news. However, the implications for that are going to be huge. I mean, huge. The implications are going to cut across the academic system. I'm a university professor, so that's where I live. It's going to completely destroy the intellectual infrastructure of so many departments. And what's going to happen is you'll get a complete collapse of everything. And what will happen after that is that the universities will quickly adapt. They'll clear away the rubble and say, okay, now that we've gotten through that, their financial institutions are going to rebuild for the future. So they're going to clear away the rubble. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going to have to change. You're going to have to change courses in physics. They're going to have to change courses in anthropology, the history of humankind. They're going to have to change courses with regard to, people in space, UFOs, extraterrestrial type stuff. The only courses that will be untouched will be things like French, Spanish, language courses, things like that. Math courses. I'm a mathematician, so at least that'll be okay. I work within a social science program, but, in the social sciences, everything's going to change. But, that's going to be a huge moment. So the fact that moment will arrive is inevitable at this point. When it's going to happen is still up for debate, but that it will happen is not in debate.
All right,
we had a question from chat, Jamie?
Yeah, we did. Sorry, I was just in the process of chatting with somebody, but this is kind of a generalized question. Somebody wanted to know what has been seen when remote viewing extraterrestrials.
Yeah, well, that gets us to our most recent project, the Aliens on Iapetus project, which I strongly recommend people to see. It just came out. It's fresh off the presses. With the extraterrestrials that were in Iapetus, that was one of the strangest things we ever looked at. I won't get into all the verifiable stuff because it's clear in the picture, and you can see the target photos and descriptions of the project on our website at farsight.org. It's right there on the top banner. But what happened with that particular one, I'm sort of cutting to the chase now, is that there's a set of structures there that were originally something like a hotel resort. Consider it like a Zen monastery retreat on steroids. And a very rich person, way richer, far richer than Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Richard Branson, the owner of Virgin Airlines, a really rich person in the ancient past built it. It was like a resort place, and the wealthiest of the wealthy, the elite of the elite went there, and it was probably, arguably, the most beautiful location, most spiritual location, most inspiring location in the entire solar system, perhaps many solar systems. Many of the moons of Saturn are on the same orbit as the rings, so on the same plane, so you can't see the rings. But Iapetus is off the plane, so when you're on that spot on Iapetus and you're looking up, you're seeing a completely unfettered star field because there's no atmosphere. You're seeing the rings of Saturn right above you, and you're seeing Saturn. It must be one of the most awe-inspiring views that you can ever imagine. The facility is very clear in the pictures. It's got curved walls on the outside, on the facade. It's got circular caps on the tops of the buildings. And it's got these big horizontal gallery windows, picture windows, along the sides of it. It's huge. And it's got something that looks like a staircase. It's not a staircase because it's too big for it, but it's built like a staircase. It looks exactly like a staircase with a right angle and so on.
Now, what was median sharpening that was used for the photography?
What was what?
The median sharpening?
The median sharpening, yeah. Well, we have the regular photo that came out from NASA. Now, NASA they have much better resolution versions of this photo than is released to the public. Spy satellites from hundreds of miles above the Earth can read the label on a baseball that's on the ground. So we can really see things very clearly. But the picture that was released to the public is what we have to work with. And so when you look at compressed pictures, JPEGs and others, what you have to do is you have to deal with the compression artifacts, which is if you have a dark area on one side and a light area on the other, there's a fuzzy gray area in the middle. And that's because of the compression artifacts. And so what median sharpening is first of all, what we use normally is we take the photo raw as it is from NASA, and then we apply a sharpening effect as part of Photoshop. It helps a little, but you can still, even in the raw image, you can still see the target facility very clearly. But then what you can do is you can have an artist go in and do what's called median sharpening. And that's a manual way of increasing the contrast. And what that basically is, if you have a dark area on one side, like black, and a white area on the other, and you have a grayish smudge in the middle that's caused by the compression algorithms, what you do is you draw a line right down the center. That's called the median, right down the center of the dark area and the white area, separating. It's like a border separating the dark and the white areas. And then you fill in the dark area completely, getting rid of all the gray, and you fill in the light white area completely, getting rid of all the gray. So you have a clear white and a clear black with a sharp dividing line between that. That's called median sharpening, but that has to be done manually. And so we did that with the picture. And then we have, now that was not part of the target. That was just to help illustrate, because some people look at a picture and can't see things clearly. It's just some people can see things and other people can't. So some people you can show them the Taj Mahal right in front of you and they won't see it. I mean, so to help people out, it was not part of the target, but to help people out, we use this median sharpening technique, and then we have the picture flip back and forth between the original and the one with the median sharpening applied, so that people can intellectually see where the whole thing is. So anyway, that's the median sharpening. I do explain that with illustrations in the actual documentary, so people can see how that works. It's the only way you can really get rid of the compression artifacts that are used when these pictures are posted.
Well, unfortunately, we only have a few minutes, and I just want to squeeze in what Blue Orb mentioned, is that what are the Ceres lights that, the mysterious anomalous, I guess you call it lights or salt deposits or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
ice. And before they take low altitude pictures of it, he would love for you guys to do a remote session on that. So I know other people mentioned.
There's a lot of people that send us suggestions for targets. Now you have to understand that we can never ever discuss future projects publicly, because then we can never do those sessions. We can never do the projects. For example, for many years, I publicly told people on air, on radio, as well as the remote viewers, don't worry, I'll never give you an extraterrestrial target. So we always said we won't do that. And I was lying, but I had to lie, because when the remote viewers do the sessions, if they had known that I was going to give them an extraterrestrial target, they're so good they would have immediately picked up that they were off-world, and their conscious mind would no longer have been in doubt, and then the imagination could have taken place. So with these sessions, you have the remote viewers even remarking at the end of sessions, like, how could this be? Courtney doesn't do these types of targets. How could this be? So they stay in doubt, and as long as their conscious mind is not engaged, you know that they're getting real, correct, perceptual data. So there's a delicate thing. So I can never, ever, ever talk about the possible targets, whether they're good or bad, that are made, the suggestions made. I mean, I heard what the suggestion is, but there's a zillion. People also want to know who killed John Kennedy. They also want to know X. They also want to know Y. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And we can never comment about any of that stuff. If we did comment on it, like saying, hey, that's a good target, I think we'll do it one day, then that's a target I can never do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That actually came up tonight. Somebody asked that if you've ever remote viewed the Kennedy assassination. So, I'm sure you get asked it all the time. Real quick, can you say anything about the Phoenix Lights? Anything you might be working on or anything like that?
Can you say it a little more clearly, Jamie?
The Phoenix Lights. Can you talk about anything about that?
Oh, the Phoenix Lights is coming up. That'll be released in mid-July. And that was the famous event that occurred on March 13th, 1997, that was witnessed by literally hundreds of thousands of people, including the governor of the state, Fife Symington. And it was not commented on by the government for many months. And 6 months after it happened, they had a flight lieutenant come out and say, oh, that was just some flares that we dropped. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was a farce. That was a ridiculous statement, because flares don't fly in formation over 5 states, and they don't stay in formation as they fly right over Phoenix and hang over Phoenix, and they don't look like the underbelly of a craft when it flies really low right over your head. So nothing about flares matches what the eyewitnesses actually saw. So this was a perfect process, a perfect example of the use of remote viewing. You have a very clear mystery, a governmental explanation that is bonkers, and hundreds of thousands of eyewitnesses. So in this case, we don't have to base it on a picture. Normally we use pictures, but because the event was witnessed by so many people, we were able to define the target verbally, and we know exactly what happened. And no, the government story does not win. So that will come out in about just 2.5 weeks, and it is a very, very interesting thing. There is a special surprise that happens in those sessions that I'm holding back on, but it's an extraordinarily unbelievable thing that happened during the remote viewing sessions, because there was a communication that occurred, an actual conversation that happened between one of the remote viewers and the people a person flying the ships.
Wow.
And it's so interesting, because the incident happened in 1997. The remote viewing happened in 2015.
Wow.
So what's so interesting is the people in 1997 flying the ships were totally aware that they were talking to a human in 2015 and having the conversation. And that was caught live on video.
Wow, I can't wait to watch that. People in chat are saying the same thing. And once again, go ahead.
Yeah. If I could say one last thing, for people who come to our website, farsight.org, do two things. Sign up for our free newsletter, because we're a nonprofit and we do not advertise. So it's the only way we have to tell people in our once-a-week free newsletter. We don't give the email addresses out for any reason at all, so there's no spam. And sign up for our YouTube channels, because we have a ton of stuff on YouTube, and it's the only way. Our free newsletter and the YouTube channels are the only way we have for people to sort of keep up with what we're doing.
Yep, you have that weekly thing, I think, on Saturdays, right, Courtney?
Yeah, it comes out on Saturdays, and it has the YouTube. We have a video blast that comes out on Fridays, and then the email one comes out on Saturdays, and it has a comic strip in it. Plus, it has actual. The last video blast, we actually had a clip from one of Daz Smith's sessions in the video blast. So if you're on our YouTube channel, you actually get to see a clip from the session in the Phoenix Lights Project. So that's the other reason to be connected with our YouTube channels, because you actually get previews of what's actually in the project.
Now, when is the when is the expected approximate release date for the Phoenix Lights session?
It'll be mid-July. We're shooting for the 10th of July. I don't know if we'll make it, but we're shooting for the 10th of July. But around the middle of July, definitely.
Well, I've enjoyed everything I've seen so far at Farsight, and I definitely look forward to seeing that as well in mid-July, Courtney.
Yeah, and remember, it does have that surprise in it. So
I'm looking forward to that. And again, I thank you so much for coming back on our show, and look forward to the work that you do, and keep up the great work.
Great. I thank you so much, guys, for inviting me on your show. I really enjoy it.
It's been a pleasure. All right, guys, we're going to take our last break and come back and wrap things up and chat a little bit about sky watching and, the remote viewing topic as a whole. So hold tight. We will be right back. More to come here on the Jamie Havican Show, right here on KGRAradio.com. Hold tight.
Victims? Be melodramatic. Down there. Would you really feel any pity if one of those dots stopped moving forever? If I offered you 20,000 pounds for every dot that stopped, would you really, old man, tell me to keep my money? Or would you calculate how many dots you could afford and spend? Free of income tax. Free of income tax. I don't know where you can save money now.
It's like my whole life. I knew I was right. Lost in the struggle.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
Hey everybody, this is Warren and Jason from the best vape shop in Ogden, the Vapor Vault.
And this is Nate from Tremonton's only vape shop, HPS powered by the Vapor Vault.
That's right, Utah's best-selling e-liquid Dragon Juice is now available in Tremonton. And we have everything a vapor needs.
From starter kits to full authentic custom mechanical mods.
Also, come try Black Dragon, our brand new line of dripper juice, made especially for RDAs. So join the vaping revolution at the Vapor Vault, just west of Wall by the Newgate Mall.
And at 17 North Tremont Street in Tremonton.
For the thousands of wounded warriors returning from battle, Wounded Warrior Project has developed the Warriors to Work program, a career counseling service that helps wounded warriors translate their military experience to a civilian job. These extraordinary men and women bring more than just teamwork and inspiration to the workplace. They bring proven world-class job skills. And to ensure proper placement, Wounded Warrior Project works with employers to find just the right job fit. Talented, skilled, and eager to get back to work, you have the opportunity to hire a seasoned veteran. Contact Wounded Warrior Project at findwwp.org. Welcome home the brave.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Van Buren, Arkansas, Sarasota, Florida.
And now, let's get back to the show. You're listening to the Jamie Havican Show right here on KGRARadio.com. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're going to wrap things up here. Courtney Brown, everybody's second time on the show, and every show has been a really good show, especially the insights into remote viewing, and I've really enjoyed both shows. Wish we had more time tonight, but he has agreed to come on after the Phoenix Lights project is released, and Bill and I have a chance to watch it. Bill, you want to tell us a little bit about this IOPITIS documentary you watched?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to give too much away when Courtney was on, but in the very beginning, when Dick Allgaier starts doing the artist, the depictions, the drawings, and you know what the picture looks like, what they enhanced on IOPITIS, and it's incredible because right away, Dick Allgaier is drawing the lines, the same description, like he's drawing the same exact, like if it was the photo, like if he was looking at the photo.
Yeah, like he's tracing it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was really good. And again, I'm sure my buddy Eric, he enjoyed this one. The 9/11 one was really, really good.
Well,
that was one of my favorite ones that I've seen on Farsight.
We're getting some good comments in chat. Best Courtney Brown interview that a few people have heard, so thank you on that one. You know what really blew my mind is how he's saying, in order for people to remote view correctly, he has to kind of project that when he does his closing. And that just opens up a can of worms and all the different things that could happen. Like him saying if he's thinking about his vacation and how some people even, do the closing on their own. It's just insane to think about.
Yeah, I was almost thinking like they're mind reading him.
I don't know.
Looking his mind into his consciousness.
I believe in the first interview, he talked about, that there's a lot of, he almost described it as frequency waves that are out there that they tap into. Right. But, yeah, it's just amazing. And he really, during break, he says, you guys are going to be surprised about, what comes out in the Phoenix Lights project coming up. So I'm really looking forward to that. And
unfortunately, he's now committed to only doing 1 hour interviews because there was some great questions in chat. I wish we could have got to all of them.
Yeah, and I thank everybody for the great questions.
Really.
I wanted to talk a little bit past the interview, just about skywatching a bit. Some of you guys may know I did a ton of it back in my day, and I'm starting to get back into it. Unfortunately, where I live, there's not too many people that are into this kind of thing. I have one buddy, and we used to organize big sky watches where we'd get 10, 20, 30 people come out, but my one friend Dave, who lives a little bit closer now, has been talking about getting a sky watch together. I don't know why he always wants to do it in the middle of the summer when the mosquitoes are out, but I told him whenever he's up to it, just let me know. So it looks like we might be putting one on pretty soon. But cool. Speaking of that, you've been doing quite a few. You got some new technology. Tell the people what kind of night vision you got now and what you guys have been capturing.
Well, thanks to Margie K, who is going to be doing her show very soon on KGRA, she recommended I get the iGen Night Vision 2020, which has an RCA output on it, which the old camera system, we were pretty much doing the same thing. Eric and I were using the RCA going out, the composite video going into the computer. So it was at a reasonable price. It's similar to Gen 2, and I went for it. And I got to tell you, we're seeing a lot more activity as far as satellites, high-altitude planes, and even some interesting objects that we really can't make of because the night vision doesn't leave the typical streaking. I would say it's not as overly sensitive exposure-wise as the old camera system was. So now it's a little more difficult to distinguish what kind of objects we're looking at when they're going at a rapid speed. You've seen the one that I sent you. It could be a meteor, but I keep looking at it and I'm not so sure. But Eric is getting his that's American Road Warrior on YouTube, by the way. He's got his night vision up and running now. So hopefully he will get going on the live Skywatches as well. Then we have our buddies up north, like Dave Universe and Joe. And Joe was the one that got Eric and I really started. He was the one that turned us on to the specifics about the equipment, the specifications that we would need. So he was the catalyst in this whole thing. And what I would like to do, maybe with your help, Jamie, is not only do the live Skywatches. I would like to get a website started where people can tune in to multiple cameras at one time. In other words, from different locations, and they can have a live feed coming from any of the cameras that are part of the website. I think that would be really cool to take it to another level.
Yeah, there's been some projects over the years where people have thought about that, and I've even thought about that. Make like a UFO grid where Skywatchers across the country have a website in common, and on that server they each get their own frame, and on a page say there'd be 12 to 20 different cameras you can click on, almost like some of these cam sites you see with weather cams or whatever. But it definitely would be amazing to do. And just anybody out there who's thinking about getting into night vision, there's really only two different scopes out there you can get. One is the one that you got, and the other is the Yukon Ranger 5x42. But if you go that route, you most likely are going to have to buy a 3x42 lens to kind of back off a bit. So it's definitely interesting stuff, and you are going to capture something amazing. I did it for about 3 years, and throughout them 3 years, I got at least 5 really, really good captures. So,
well, actually, our Eric, American Road Warrior, he got the tube. He's got the intensifier tube, a Gen 2, and he hooked up a camcorder to it. I think UFO Lou on YouTube helped him out with that. And I'm going to tell you, there are different approaches, and they all work. This is where, ingenuity comes into play. I mean, Eric and I have been doing this for a while now. So we kind of know the in and outs of how to put things together and get it all organized and set up. But, I mean, the more people that get involved with this, and Jamie, that I'm having an average of
it's picked up big time. Yeah, it's picked up big time. There's really only one other Skywatcher on YouTube, and he gets so many hits and so many viewers.
Dark Skywatcher?
Yeah, Dark Skywatcher. I mean, they sponsor his trips, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not going to say it's 100%, but as far as I know, they sponsor his trips out to Area 51 and all these other places, and you get this thing going, not saying, you're out there just to get new equipment, but people chipping $1 here and there, you could be running, state-of-the-art telescopes that track things on their own. But, what's great, too? That
we have these Skype conversations with...
Yeah, during the Skywatch.
Yeah, it's fun. We got our usual friends like Lorraine and Dave and
Chris,
RW, yourself. Even Cindy Bailey of the Drone Report has come on from time to time. It's so much fun, that we have a great discussion, and we do this for hours.
Yeah, it's typically like a radio show kind of chat.
Yeah, but it's
while you're skywatching,
so
and we get into funny stuff. Sometimes somebody will share their screen and play some goofy videos while we're watching the stream at the same time, and sometimes we'll laugh so hard we're all crying.
Like about when that whole Roswell slides thing came out, you were there,
geez,
and a few of us were on, and we did our own little analysis and research. Everybody in the KGRA chat room, you know who I'm talking about, you guys.
Yeah.
And in less than an hour, we were able to come to the same deduction that was released the following day or so, that it was a 2-year-old mummified child.
Yep.
And we did it in an hour.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's fun, when we get on those conversations and we start rolling. I mean, again, I enjoy it. It's a passion, and it's always fun to have all our friends be a part of it.
Yeah, the only thing that kind of sucks is, KJRA is so booked up now, especially with some of the new shows that are coming aboard, and there's still a couple others we're trying to fit in. If these others fit in, we are not going to have a night where there's not a show, but we want to do our sky watching too, so we can't, basically go out there and advertise, hey, we're doing a sky watch, in KJRA. But those of you who would like to join it can always message Bill and ask when he's planning on doing one, and join us. It's definitely going to be fun. We're planning one coming up soon, so if you'd like to join that, just message Bill and we'll get things together. Who do we have coming up next week?
We have Margie K.
Margie K.
coming next Sunday, and she starts her show, I think, in a couple of weeks, I believe.
Yeah, and John Burroughs' show starts the 30th.
Anybody else that you can say is coming with a new show here?
I don't have confirmation that I can announce it on air yet. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I mean, I know it's locked in. I don't know if I can go out there and say anything yet or not. But yeah, there's another new show coming on Friday nights that'll lead up to Jill's show. Unfortunately, if you guys don't know, Jill's off till the 17th. I think the 17th is going to be her first show back. So just to let you guys know. But Friday nights will be packed. We're trying to get Thursday nights. Thursday nights are pretty much filled up.
John Burroughs will be on the
Thursday night. Right? So starting then, and we're just going from there. Every night is basically going to be packed here within the next month or two. I would say every night's going to be full. So, and Race is really holding down the weekdays, and I'm trying to hold down the weekends.
And maybe I can help down the line in some capacity with that as well.
Need to get that broadcaster up, man. Really. In transitions, Bill's broadcaster did not want to switch over for some reason. It kept recognizing the old setup, so we got to figure that out.
Yep. But I think we're also going to have Klaus Donner coming up in the future. I definitely look forward to speaking to Klaus. And Jesse Marcel, Rich Hoffman. And our buddy Mike Carano wants to come back and talk about flying saucers.
When I first talked to him, he wanted to do like a 6-7 part series.
Right.
And I said, let's do the first show, and the first show was great. I mean, it kind of hurt my brain a little bit trying to get up to his level, and when you study one thing like that, the guy's just full of knowledge that is incredible. I went ahead and told him our next opening, he's coming on, and he's going to talk about UFOs this time. So maybe this time we'll be able to keep up a little bit better. Not saying that we are below average in any form, but he is way above average in his intelligence.
The last show was intense, to say the least, Jamie.
Indeed. So,
and a little bad news today, unfortunate news, when SpaceX failed, the rocket failed today. It was a resupply mission to the ISS, and it was entering the second stage, and it unfortunately it blew up. And today was Elon Musk's birthday, so I don't know how he celebrated his birthday with that failure today. So hopefully they'll get things back on track and set it straight. And
I didn't even hear about that. SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket broke up in a fiery blast on Sunday, just minutes after its launch with the robotic Dragon cargo capsule headed for the ISS. It took off right on time after a seemingly flawless countdown, rising into the sunny skies over Cape Canaveral. Oh, I should have watched that, because I could see those from here, too. At 10:21 a.m., but a little bit more than 2 minutes after liftoff, video showed it disintegrating. Well, things like that are going to happen with the new, the whole transition into space, faring.
It's a 95% success rate. That's what they said on the news today. So,
but when it goes bad, that's millions and millions of dollars going bad. So, I think the government has done a good thing in one part where they're putting it out there, so it ain't taxpayers' money that's going down the drain. Not all of it, a lot of it, but not all of it. So we'll see what develops from that. Hopefully they figure out exactly what caused it, and the people on the ISS don't go hungry.
Exactly. Well, the Russians are launching one at the end of this week, so we'll see how that one goes. So, yeah, it's never a good thing. But again, like you said, it's all about the transition, privatization. You know, these companies that are doing the work for NASA, and hopefully, again, they'll set it straight because our space program definitely needs a facelift, and we need to get back out there on our own. I am still one that doesn't like the idea of sending our astronauts and paying 25 million per astronaut to go on a Russian rocket.
I guarantee we have technology to get them there with no problem. But I've been watching a lot of these shows on the History Channel because I watch them a lot early morning, stealth, like, and these planes that they're saying are still cutting edge technology, were around before I was even born. So you're telling me that's still what we have out there? Give me a break.
Yeah. I mean, even the Orion, you see how massive the Orion is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're telling me we can't launch or something else? It's just, they're trying to go this privatization route and letting Elon and some of the others doing the work. And, I guess it is cost efficient to do it that way. It's all about budgets. Well, unfortunately, they cut the heck out of the space program budget.
But. I mean, the space shuttle basically was a plane. It just needed a rocket to get into space. We know we have the power to get a traditional type airplane into space. I don't see why we don't have something like that can just go into space, drop off the payload, the astronauts come right back. It has to exist. I would bet a lot on it.
It does. We're just not told that it does exist.
We didn't, we didn't know that radar existed till like 25 years after it was invented, which is just crazy.
Exactly. So we're always the last ones to know. Even with the X-37B doing what it's doing, and I don't know. We spoke about this on a Skywatch, the WU-14, this reentry system rocket, whatever you may want to call it, glider, that the Chinese are developing for, unfortunately, multiple nuclear warheads that would travel at the speed of Mach 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we have things up there too to counter. So
another thing I've been watching is something called Space Talk with the astrophysicist. What's his name? The black guy, color guy.
The one from Hayden Planetarium.
Yeah, I can't think of his name, but that's a really good show because he interviews like the head of NASA and some other interesting things I seen was this thing called Project Thor or Thor's Hammer, which was like a space-based weapon that a lot of insiders believe is real. And what it is a platform in space that shoots these titanium telephone pole-sized kinetic missiles, and they could shoot them down at a target on Earth with no warhead, but just the kinetic energy from something that big hitting something is just amazing. And this one guy says he invented it back in the 60s, but at the time they didn't have the technology to get it up there, but many think that it is up there now. Just imagine something like that.
Well, you know what? I guess Ronald Reagan wasn't too far off with the Star Wars program, because I bet you.
And I've been seeing something else about this fence. There's some kind of, I don't know if somebody in chat can help me out, but they've been talking about this fence that we have in space. I'm not sure what it is, but a lot of people are saying that's real as well. Some type of Skynet or something.
Well, by the way, Valery Uvarov, I met through a friend, through Klaus. He was the head of the UFO research in Russia. He wants to come on soon, and he spoke of a Terminator program that they have the ability to shoot down objects that are coming in from space. So who knows if that's somehow connected, not just to shooting down meteor.
You got to be on top of things. I mean, like say that Thor thing is coming at you. You only have a couple minutes to get on it and shoot it because the speed it's traveling. But yeah, like a meteor or something, I totally believe we could deflect a meteor because you catch it far enough out, it only takes a little bit of energy to sway it slightly off course.
Yep. But the thing is, using nukes on a large object may do even more.
Oh yeah, it may send thousands of asteroids
exactly
instead of one big one.
So you got to be careful how you pursue this.
Indeed.
So it's going to be interesting to see how things go in the future as far as the space program and all related defense programs, and I hate to say it, unfortunately, offensive platforms as well. So it looks like everybody's stepping it up, all the major powers.
Indeed. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up. Remember, tomorrow, guys, things start at 6 p.m. with the Grayling Report, followed by the Richard Dolan Show, and then Jimmy Church. I seen Jimmy Church on Hangar One the other night, and yeah, it's a good show, and everybody on there is doing a good job. And, you know, I see a lot of people in chat bashing MUFON. I'm not a member, never have been, but of course there's bad people in every asset of organizations, but there's a lot of good people as well. So
Erica Lewis, Rich Hoffman, there's a bunch of great people in MUFON.
Roger Marsh, Steve Hudgens, our own Steve Hudgens. There's the good outweigh any bad that may be out there. I've really never come across anybody who I've disliked in MUFON. So
exactly. Well, Jamie, it was great to be on with you tonight, and thank you to all the listeners that were here tonight, and all our good friends in KGRAradio.com chat room. It's always a pleasure to be here and to be a part with you and doing the show with Jamie.
Well, it's a big help having you on board, and it helps out tremendously. And tonight, we are going to play out with some Pantera.
Cool. Good night, everybody.
Take care, guys.